Right. Let's quickly see a few pathologies. Really, the ones that you see commonly in your day-to-day practice is just ascites, pneumoperitoneum, and secondary neoplasms of the peritoneal cavity, of course, along with tubercular involvement. So if you know these four, then you're good to go. The others are more theoretical, but you must be aware of them, and you should know them. So this is the example that we saw earlier, where this was air in the lesser sac consequent to gastric perforation, and this is another example of a patient with a duodenal perforation. You can see that the perforation is located at D3 D4 junction, and it you can see the free air and the oral contrast leaking out into the retroperitoneum structures there. But you also see some air in the small bowel mesentery. Now that you know why this air is there in the small bowel mesentery, because that is the root of the mesentery taking off from the ligament of Treats, and its proximity has allowed the free air to enter the intraperitoneal cavity. Otherwise, this is a retro peritoneal pocket of collection. The other pathology that you see often is ascites. Now, ascites can be transudative or exudative. Transudative is when as you see in patients with liver disease, congestive cardiac failure, hyperproteinemia, nephrotic syndrome, and so on and so forth. The ascites here is very homogeneous in appearance. It's typically low density, less than 20 Hounsfield unit, and you can see, because it's systemic condition, you can see fluid in other spaces, for instance, in the pleural and the pericardial spaces, and usually there is no loculation of this ascites. As against that, in exudative ascites, as you get in, say, situations like infection, malignancy, hemorrhages, and so on and so forth, you have a higher density of the ascites, typically more than 20 to 30 Hounsfield unit. You will see other features of peritoneal infection or involvement with peritoneal thickening. You can see loculation and septation within. So this is a young lady who presented with abdominal distension and pain in the abdomen, and what we see is a lot of ascites. You also see omental caking there, so that is the greater omentum, and you can see that the omentum is thick and hazy, so there's omental caking. No other feature, no lymphadenopathy, and no other organ involvement. An ascitic tap on this patient revealed negative for malignancy. There were no cells there were no malignant cells, and there was a high amount of ADA in the ascitic fluid. And a mental biopsy came out positive on Gene Expert for MTB. So this was tubercular involvement. It's always a good idea to confirm a microbiological diagnosis of TB and not just empirically start TB treatment in your patients. Let's move on to the peritoneal neoplasms. So you can have primary neoplasms and secondary neoplasms. The secondary ones are the more common ones, and then you can have some miscellaneous tumors as well. So the primary neoplasms, typically the mesothelioma, unlike the pleural mesothelioma, here there is in some subtype there is association with asbestos exposure, while in the other types, which typically affects the women, there is no asbestos exposure. You can have an appearance depending on the subtype of malignant peritoneal mesothelioma as something that is simulating peritoneal carcinomatosis, which is like ascites, peritoneal thickening, mental caking, and so on and so forth. And the sarcomatoid subtype, here it simulates peritoneal sarcomatosis, where you have a lot more solid peritoneal involvement. So that's a solid peritoneal involvement, while there is a lot more ascites and peritoneal thickening in the epitheloid subtype of malignant mesothelioma. The other two types of mesothelioma are the well-differentiated papillary mesothelioma, where again your imaging appearance is similar to peritoneal carcinomatosis, or benign multicystic mesothelioma. Both of these affect women more, and they have a better prognosis, and there is no history of asbestos exposure. So the benign multicentric mesothelioma, you can have cystic multilocular cystic involvement in the pelvis, and note that the ovary is separate from this lesion. So with the moment you see a peritoneal disease and you see some multilocular cystic lesions in the pelvis, don't just jump to an ovarian carcinoma. Identify whether it is separate from the from the the cystic, if you can identify the ovary separate, and then you remember that you can have other pathologies as well, for instance, multicystic mesothelioma. The other primary neoplasm is a primary peritoneal serous carcinoma, where everything with your imaging appearance and your histopathology is going to be similar to peritoneal carcinomatosis, without the only difference being that there's no ovarian involvement in these conditions. So that's an example where you see ascites, you see some peritoneal thickening, you see some omental caking there, but there are no adnexal mass lesions. So this the possibility of this being a primary peritoneal serous carcinoma must be entertained. Let's move on to the secondary involvement of the peritoneal cavity with neoplastic processes, and there are four subtypes to it. So when you have peritoneal carcinomatosis, that is when the peritoneal cavity is seeded by malignant epithelial cells. Typically, the primary is stomach, colon, appendix, pancreaticobiliary structures, or the ovary. Here you would see a lot of ascites. You will see peritoneal thickening, omental thickening. You can see mesenteric or peritoneal nodules, and you can see peritoneal caking. But the predominant feature is the wet type. So there's a lot of ascites. So this is the example that we saw earlier. This is a operated case of a CS stomach, and you can see a pull-through surgery there, and you see a lot of nodular thickening of the greater omentum and some ascites there. The second type of peritoneal seeding of disease processes is the pseudomyxoma peritoni. Here you can have accumulation of mucinous deposits from a primary mucinous tumor. Typically, the primary is from the appendix, ovary, or GI tract. What you see is loculated mucinous ascites that is scalloping the solid organ. So here you see this is a patient with mucinous adenocarcinoma of the ovary, and you see these loculated mucinous deposits which are scalloping the liver surface there and the stomach there. Occasionally, you may see solid peritoneal implants as well, but the dominant feature in pseudomyxoma peritoni will be a hypodense mucinous deposit in the peritoneal cavity. Now, this is again an interesting example, middle age, not middle age, a little 60 plus aged lady who presented with 1 month story of pain in the abdomen. What you see is some ascites there, no scalloping really, but a lot of ascites in the pelvic spaces. And then look at what is happening to the appendix. You see the appendix is distended structure with some calcification along its wall. That's a curved reformat. That's a cecum, and that's the appendix, which is distended and shows some peripheral calcification. So we said that this is likely to be a mucinous a neoplasm of the appendix with mucinous deposits. And note that there is a calcification within that mucinous ascites in this region. Again, a pointer to a mucinous neoplasm or pseudomyxoma peritoni, and that's what it turned out to be. Peritoneal sarcomatosis. This is a spread of malignant mesenchymal cells, not epithelial cells, which you would see in carcinomatosis. And the primary can be either a malignant gist or a leiomyosarcoma or a liposarcoma. Here you would see more solid enhancing omental and mesenteric nodular masses and minimal ascites. You may see liver mets in a malignant gist involvement. And if you see macroscopic fat in the peritoneal nodules, think of a liposarcoma involvement. So this is an example, a middle-aged lady. You can see a large gist there abutting the stomach. And what do you see in the rest of the peritoneal cavity? You see ascites, and you see these solid enhancing nodular lesions studded all over in the peritoneal cavity. In fact, a lot of them are, rounded in morphology and intensely enhancing. So this is typical of the gist that has spread to the peritoneal cavity. Peritoneal lymphomatosis. This is when there is spread of lymphoid cells. This is rare, is seen in immunosuppressed patients. Again, your imaging features are similar to peritoneal carcinomatosis, where you see ascites and peritoneal thickening. But if you have added on features such as lymphadenopathy and hepatosplenomegaly, then you can raise the possibility of peritoneal lymphomatosis. Just one quick word of this rare tumor, but since it has a characteristic clinical and imaging spectrum, so that's why I've put that in. It's a fairly rare tumor, occurs in young men, and you can see peritoneal thickening, nodules, mass lesions, and ascites. But the dominant mass will be in the pelvis, in the paravesical or retrovesical spaces. So if you see that there is a dominant mass in the peritoneal cavity of the pelvic spaces, and it's a young man, then you can raise the possibility or think of a desmoplastic small round cell tumor. These are often also associated with metastasis to liver, lung, bone, and lymphadenopathy, and they usually have a bad prognosis. So that, I think, brings me to the end of my lecture. What we have done is we've basically emphasized the peritoneal anatomy, because understanding the anatomy is key to understanding pathology. We've seen a few peritoneal pathologies. Important to remember that peritoneal tubercular involvement and secondary involvement of the peritoneal cavity are the common conditions. Primary peritoneal neoplasms are not as common as the secondary involvement.